all nations.
I grew up in 81. I think your year was 92. So there's almost a 10-year gap there where, in those times in the 80s, there wasn't much talk about, social type of anxieties or fears. There wasn't much talk about, whether you're like autism or Asperger's or anything like that. There was definitely, it existed, but it wasn't something that you would go to the doctors and say, hey, can you like check if I'm on the spectrum somehow, or my child is showing these symptoms. Can you tell me what this is? And not much knowledge was. Even today, we're in 2023 with all the different things that we have going on. We got Facebook and Instagram and all these different social things that cause anxieties and cause a lot of insecurity and fear because of the exposure that has, let alone have something that your body doesn't agree with in real life. Like you got all these different things that we have to struggle with, let alone if you have autism or if you have Asperger's or if you have something, ADD or something. All those things didn't exist in 80s, to get, like diagnosed in a way that nowadays, if like, I don't know, let's say my kids or something, and they're homeschooled, but if they go to like, to school normally as everybody else does, they would technically, if they see that they're behind just a little bit, they'll start thinking, oh, he has to get checked because he might have some sort of deficiency in focus or something like that. Now, I met you, and I know you said that, and we figured out through relationship that you do have Asperger's, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you find this out, like in your journey?
So I think I was still in high school. I was still in high school. It was for, my mom, because, I was having trouble finding work because I wouldn't talk.
Ah, okay.
Especially, job interviews.
Yeah.
So my mom found a I don't know how to describe him, like
a specialist or something?
Like a
you mean like a doctor that knows about it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like a specialist of like Asperger's or like, like social type like things, Yeah, I get it. Yeah, because I was just perfect because I was just gonna ask, how would you know, even for the people watching today, like how would you kind of pinpoint, like what you said, you weren't talking, you weren't communicating well. So that was an indicator for like that kind of like, social thing that Asperger's is, right? Is almost like, what is it? Would you call it like a more of a, like a lack of communication type thing? Or what is it really kind of like considered Asperger's?
Well, now, I believe, it's everything's under the autism spectrum.
Gotcha. So they added it as a part of a category there. Okay. So that's interesting, because like you wouldn't tell, guys, like you guys are watching right now, you guys wouldn't tell that, that my brother would have Asperger's or something. But at the end of the day, it's almost like what also, and we'll get into this, how God can then, come into the picture and bring a whole 180 to your life, whatever it is that you're experiencing. If you have a the society, doctors, places, they'll call it a deficiency or some sort of lack, but we've learned as we've gotten to know each other that it's much more than that. It's in a good way, not a bad way, because what people, and this is where we kind of fall in almost the same category, and what I was trying to allude to is that in the 80s, I would have probably, if they would have had all the knowledge that they know now, I probably would have been on the spectrum as well. I probably would have been told I had some ADD or something crazy going on in my focus, but it's an interesting thing. I saw a video way back of how to understand autism, how to understand what a child goes through when they have like what they call a meltdown, or they kind of close out and they freak out for something, and we don't know what it is. Or they'll be at the park and it's a fun time and kids are playing, and they'll have a different way of the perspective in which they see the park, they hear the park, they interact with kids, it could be a sensory overload, you know and that can cause someone, anybody, to disagree with whatever sound, whatever atmosphere, wherever. If there's a suspicious person or something, it'll cause a red flag. But for a person with autism, wherever you fall into the spectrum, it will be enhanced. It will be something a lot more. In the video, they showed like a little girl, and I think the squeaking of like they were on the swing, kids were on the swing, and she could hear more so the squeaking of the swing more so than the laughter of the child on the swing. They would hear the trees, but they would hear them like a violent rushing wind more than a breeze in the air. But then there are other things that nobody would notice that they would notice. As we work together, I started noticing I'm very like that in a lot of ways, where there's things that it's a sensory overload. I can't focus on certain things if certain things aren't in place. Like right now we have like 3 cameras on, and my mind is going at 100, to remember timers and remember what angle and remember all these things. If the light is positioned properly, all these different things will throw me off while you're talking to me, and I'll just be on some other like venture in my head of like, I need to like do this and that and the other thing for the next time, all these different things, which is why in my communication skills were not that great, because I would then talk to somebody 5 different things at the same time in one conversation, and I'm meaning those 5 different things at the same time, while the person listening to me is only worrying about the one thing that I'm probably talking about at that moment. If I'm talking about my coffee taste, and there's 50 million types of coffees, I'll talk to you in one conversation about those 50 types of coffee and relate one thing about those 50 types of coffee, right? But the person's only worrying about the Tim Hortons cup. So you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a very mental thing. So in relationship with you, there's a lot of different things about you that I saw in myself, that I said, you know what? I can't accept that people call autism or Asperger's within the spectrum of autism a lack or a deficiency. It's almost like there, and we've had talks about this before, where there'll be moments where you'll come and you want to talk and you want to sit and you want to kind of vent like anybody would, because there's a lot of pressure in the job, a lot of demands, a lot of deadlines, and we'll have to sit and talk and be like, yo man, like I know they asked me to do this, but it's like I need to do this first before I get to that, and all these different ways of us seeing things that, to what society says a normal person will look at it this way, we don't see it that way. We see it in a whole different perspective that is also just as effective, and if not better, because we're seeing it from many different angles that normally other people won't see it. There's a positive, to that, a lot of positive to that. And that's where God comes in, to where then there could be some negative parts that people just won't understand how we deal with things. We probably become more needy when it comes to like advisory, sitting down and venting more so than other people, because we'll have so much on our mind that, at home, I'll break down and cry about whatever happened, a week ago. Just on a private, just me and my wife or whatever. And, and not maybe have the capacity to do it in public, but I would do it at home, and nobody would know that. So they would think that they would consider me as what society would call normal, because they don't see me like freaking out in front of people. But doesn't mean that I don't freak out at home. It doesn't mean that I don't, do it behind closed doors, because we all go through that, but it in an enhanced version to how we kind of experience the world. So how as a person that God has put out in, audio video world, all these different things, how does what you have going on with yourself um enhanced or bettered your life as it relates to the ministry that you have in your hands?
Um,
I guess that's almost a loaded question. I think what I mean to say is almost like, I mean, like we talked before, is almost like the focus that you have. It's almost like a superpower. You almost like focus on 10 different things at the same time versus most other people what can only do one at a time or two at a time at the most. And we're talking parents, people that have multiple children. They may have even multiple jobs to do, hold 2 or 3 ministries, and they still can only do like one or two things at a time. While I'll see you tacking on 5 or 6 different things at a time. You'll get, done in a week or something. It's amazing the focus that you have. So it's almost like when people look at you, they'll probably see like, oh man, he can't focus as good as maybe whatever person comes next. But the way I see it is that I think what really happens is that we have the capacity to focus to so many things at the same time, that what we lose as human beings is the capacity to kind of organize those thoughts, kind of bring in all this sensory, all this different, all these different things that we need to do, and then try to take them all on. And everybody does this, like where they will want to be superhero to everything, right? And they want to try to do and accomplish everything or please everybody. But we tend to almost not shut that down. Like other people would just shut down and say, I need a vacation, I need to get out of here, while we would try to continue to grind on that and push it out. So how do you manage on, moments where you feel you're becoming overwhelmed by too many things? How do you kind of bring it all back and kind of focus on just certain things that you're able to control at that time?
so, just recently, talking to someone who you trust.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's important. Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah.
Because even in those moments when, and I've been through a lot to know, like, that I'm starting to see a pattern. Because I'm very like, I like rhythm, I like routines.
Yes.
So now as I've been through a lot, I'm starting to find that there is like a rhythm here.
Gotcha.
There's a routine. There's a pattern that I need to say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let me go talk to someone I trust.
Yeah. Guys, are you seeing this? Like at the end of the day, we're talking to someone that we're identifying as someone that has Asperger's, right? But that sounds familiar to all of us. Like we need to stop for a second, right? And say, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much for me. Like I can't handle all of these different things that I'm being asked to do. And I need to find someone to talk to. Counseling is a very important thing, I think, that we need to all be a part of, not just people that have an issue with something, communication or just emotional baggage, but we really need to, have someone to talk to and really go to that can help us sort out our thoughts, right? I mean, most of the time I got my wife with me. Sometimes I even sit and talk to my teenage boy about anything, and I've gotten good at communicating with him about things that not a normal 13-year-old boy would really know much about, and just his innocence and his purity and his way of thinking as a 13-year-old helps me really process, helps me kind of put things in perspective because they'll see it in such a simplified manner. And I think that's what you're alluding to, is that eventually we need to really kind of simplify things. We really need to kind of pull down, kind of bring in, all of those thoughts into a singular kind of track and singular avenue of thought, So you've always been a part of like production and technology. Do you think that, do you play like video games as well? Or have you played video games?
I used to.
Okay.
Probably the last video game I played was Watch Dogs.
Watch Dogs, right? That's not too bad. That's kind of recent. That's not too far off. Um, when it comes to things like that kind of tax you on, hand-eye coordination, or like I know you're very good with like the projection system here when it comes to like ProPresenter and stuff like that, and even designing things that were specific to the sermon and stuff like that. It's a very cool thing to, for us, it's almost like again, a sixth sense that we have that we can really see things in a different way that would help us. It's almost like a precognition, man. Like it's almost like we can almost sense where it's gonna go, or what either issue's gonna pop up or not pop up. It's a real blessing, to have you around, because you can kind of see the details that we would normally miss, because we're focused on something different, while your senses are focused on almost the overall picture, even outward. A lot of times they're using what is the Marvel movies or DC movies and stuff like that. A lot of these gifts that these people have, they're trying to humanize them. They're not trying to say that this person is, more so from another planet and they're a god or whatever, but they would humanize them to a point to make you think that you can be that powerful as well. And the reason for that is because I think it's at a time nowadays where people are embracing, the differences. They're embracing more so. If you do have autism, well, we're going to embrace you for that. That's at least a plus in society nowadays, is that with all of the inclusion talks and all of the different things that are going on, some of that in the positive side at least is bringing an awareness to those that do have autism, and how to include them into the normal narrative of life, and use and embrace their gifts, because that's how we call some of the autism things that we have seen with people that could be on the spectrum and are on the spectrum, is like almost a gift from God that you are able to focus this way. There are things that you've edited. I mean, you guys can go on commitmentchurch.org and see some of his work from the church, and this is just for the church. But there's also things that you're involved in by yourself outside of commitment. And what are those things that you do that you're currently being used from God, and your gifts that you use for different ministries?
So I'm a part of Inspiring Life Together.
Gotcha.
Pastor John and Spring and their children, they were coming here to this church.
Right.
So
and they became pastors there eventually at Crescent, right?
Yeah. Pastor John became pastor at Crescent.
Gotcha.
Well, his wife Spring, she got sick with breast cancer.
Gotcha.
But the Lord healed her.
She's
Supernaturally.
a survivor. So she started this organization.
Yes, and
gotcha.
she thought of me because she needed a website.
Gotcha.
And she kind of she brought me over to her house, their house at the time, and which is their old house because they moved.
Right.
But she invited me in, and she sat me down at her computer and just see what I can do. Was asking about websites.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know the answer, she would see that I was researching before I give an answer.
Right. That's good training.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm part of IoT. I still do the website. And any tech issues Spring needs help with. She asked me.
Yeah.
So we're doing really well there. God is really blessed Spring and working with the team there.
And what's their website?
So their website is inspiringlifetogether.org.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, what other things are you actually doing right now?
I'm writing my testimony.
Okay.
I feel that I need to share my story.
Yes.
So I'm actually writing it. And it almost like the Lord gave me an idea of just putting up a website
Yeah.
and just having like little cards that let it be spirit led, and give someone a card to for them to feel encouraged to go to that website and read my story
Gotcha.
of how I came to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And I made a video, I made a trailer.
Cool.
You helped me with
Yeah.
the vision for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's what we're here for, you know. I think there's so many things that we can help each other with. You know, we'll actually show the trailer in a little bit so you guys can see that. And you know, like even bilingual, right? Like trying to reach out to the Spanish community as well. So the trailer is also in Spanish. What's the you said so you're starting to tell your story. How are you accomplishing this?
So I'm still writing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of like releasing it in parts on my website.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. So what's your website?
So my website
Is it live?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's all live. My website is lookwhereimstandingnow.com.
Gotcha. Lookwhereimstandingnow.com. Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm. From autistic to faith in Christ.
That's beautiful.
So, and the purpose behind the message is just being an encouragement for other autistics. Like,
Yeah.
look where I'm standing now. Like,
Yeah.
even though in the midst of what we go through, living with Asperger's or
Yeah.
being autistic,
Yeah.
and going through like these meltdowns and
Mhm.
not really sure like what's really bothering us.
Sure.
That there's hope.
Yeah.
That down the road you can say, look where I'm standing now.
That's awesome, man. That's really thoughtful. That's really awesome. And I think more people, whether they are on the spectrum or not, need to hear your story. So a lot of what was said today wasn't even scratching the surface. There's a lot more to the story. So I would encourage you guys to go check out lookwhereimstandingnow.org.
.com.
And I put it up here so you guys can see it. And I will share also, that it's been a blessing to continue to work with you because it's just eye-opening all the things that God is doing through you, and how much, we can relate to how God is using you and in such a wonderful, impactful way. Your videos cross satellites to, around the world, and people are impacted by just the work and the storytelling skill that you have with your editing. And it's a wonderful thing. So I encourage you guys to check the website out, read this young man's story, get into sharing it, and even like and subscribe to whatever he has going on his website. But right now I'm going to show you the trailer to his story, and then we'll end the show at the end of it. So check it out. All right, so that was the trailer to Nick's story, and again, it's also bilingual, so he's working on not just putting it up English, but also it's going to be available in Spanish, and then soon enough we'll have him come back and kind of talk more about, now that the story's out, talk more about that story and go in depth with it. So this is almost like a kind of like a prelude before we get into the really meat and potatoes of his ministry and his story. So I'd like to thank you, Nick, for even being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I think it's just the beginning of what God wants to do. Again, this is sort of like a combination, show, Worship Team Foundations with AVNEW or AVNEW, with Nick, and and just kind of touching base on even all the journeys that we may go through. I mean, who would ever thought, right, that you wrestled and you were a part of that, and being a part of that community, to then get into production from that, and even using it, all those skills that God has taken us on a journey for, to then use it in His glory and His kingdom, and the story doesn't end there, right? So it continues. So again, thank you for being a part of it. You guys that are listening or watching, thank you for listening. And being on CTCM Radio, a station for all nations. And I will see you next time on a next episode of, whatever show we come up with next, So this was special presentation and AVNEW. So thanks for listening. See you next time, or hear you next time, or speak to you next time. Bye.